Hello everyone. It's good to reach out to you again and just share some time with you. As you can see, a little different today. We've got three of us sitting together, and we just like to do a little background on who we are. Not that you don't know us, but just to give you a little bit of a context of who we are and how we came to respond to our vocations. This coming weekend, as you may know, being the fourth Sunday of Easter, the church celebrates the World Day of Prayer for vocations. So the church has this focus, this time to reflect on how each of us are called, particularly to the religious life, but often where those vocations come from in terms of the family. During this time, when we are all having to spend a lot of time in our homes, we have time like we've never had before to be together in our home, if we're in our families, or just to spend time in our homes, whether it be studying or working or, entertaining ourselves, whatever it is. But there's also this time to deepen our faith, to come together, to enter into times of prayer. And it's prayer that really helps individuals and families pursue this vocation that we all have as members of the church, which is to be the domestic church, the home church. So like never before, God is giving us this opportunity. So we here would like to just help you in that effort to become truly what God is calling us to become, which is the home church, the domestic church. So again, we thought we would just start off by just saying a little bit about ourselves, where we're coming from, and take it from there. So maybe we'll just turn it over to Father Greg, and Father Greg, if you could just share a little bit about some of your background and how you came to understand that Jesus was asking you to consider a call to the priesthood.
Okay, well, hello everybody. It's good to be here. My vocation was born from my family. I always wanted to be a priest since the time I was very small. We had several cousins, or my parents' cousins, had been priests in Antigonish, Nova Scotia. Was, as it is known as the Small Vatican, is quite a place for vocations. So since a very, very young age, and thanks to my family, I always felt called to the priesthood. And then, of course, it was also the place where we go into town, about 7 or 8 miles away into Antigonish, and we see all these people from around the world at the Cody Institute and the Cooperative Institute, from Asia, Africa, Latin America. So from the very beginning, I kind of had this interest in international things, in international life. So the natural thing would be to become a missionary. So I've always wanted to be a missionary. And when we moved as regionals of victim disparity, we had to move to Ontario. My father had no work. So we moved to Ontario when we were small kids, and then entering the seminary and so forth. And then I was sent to Peru for a few months, 40 some years ago. So that's kind of my story of my vocation, and it's a great, interesting thing. The most important thing of a vocation is you do not what's the easiest part, but what makes you most alive and most responsive to God's will. How about you, Joanne? Where was your vocation born, or how did you become interested in becoming a priest?
So during the altar server right after when I received First Communion, it was grade 3, and then when I was in 5th grade, I went to diaconate ordination in my home parish, which is cathedral. And I saw one of the deacons smile during the celebration after the ordination mass, and I thought, wow, he looks so happy. So I want to be happy like him. So that was my first thought. So thinking about priesthood, and then when I was in high school in Korea, we had to stay at school until 9 p.m., 10 p.m., 11 p.m. So in the night, I kind of bored to study. So I thought about future. And I thought there are two different kinds of lives. One is living for myself and my family, the other one is living for the others. So I want to live for others. So then I applied to seminary after high school. Then I've been accepted. So since then I'm looking forward to serve the church and the people of God as a priest. And hopefully this year, may God ordain me so that I can serve the Archdiocese, especially in the Archdiocese of Toronto. Yeah. What about you, Father?
Well, I think I consider myself a bit of a late bloomer, and yesterday I was reminded that I'm also a Zoomer, so I'm a Zoomer who's a late bloomer, and so I never really had this sense that I might be called to the priesthood really until I was in my early 30s, late 20s, early 30s. At that time I was teaching, and I was pursuing a degree part-time in theology, so I was learning a lot about the history of the church and the ways of the church. And also around that same time, a friend of mine said, Dominic, I want to become a Catholic. And so he was going through a process called the RCIA. Perhaps you're familiar with that, the Rite of Christian Initiation for Adults. And so he asked me to join him to be his sponsor. And so every Saturday morning I would go with him to his church and undergo these sessions. And I found that not only was I learning more about the church as I was accompanying my friend, but I found myself falling in love with her church, loving the church in its history and its peoples and its different expressions of faith. And as I grew to love the church, I also was deepening my own relationship with Jesus, in who is the church is founded, and in loving the church, I felt this sense that he was asking me to serve his church, and so just trying to figure that out, meeting with a spiritual director, and in different ways, I had this sense then of being invited to consider a life as a priest. And my initial response was to push it away. I didn't think I was worthy. I didn't think I had the wherewithal to carry out such a life. And so it took a while for me to kind of accept that. And I remember at one point being invited to attend a weekend retreat at St. Augustine Seminary there on the Scarborough Bluffs. And it was there that I met other seminarians, other men who were also feeling this call to the priesthood. And I realized that they had the same questions, the same concerns, but also, this deep desire also to respond and to listen and to follow Jesus and what he is asking each of us to do in our lives. And when I saw that I wasn't alone, that I could walk this journey with others, I had the grace to take a leave of absence, a sabbatical from teaching, and enter into the seminary. And from there on in, it was just, I kept getting green lights until I left teaching completely and embraced the priesthood. So that's a little bit about my background. And it was all pretty local. I grew up in Whitby, was teaching in Pickering, went to the seminary in Scarborough. So for the most part, I guess I'm considered a kind of a local yokel, I guess, along with being a Zoomer bloomer. So that's a little bit about my background. And so just a bit more about who we are, in terms of what makes us tick, and just identifying ourselves as ordinary human beings. We're just trying to respond to God and his call in our lives. We thought we'd share a little bit more about ourselves. So Father Greg and Deacon Joanne, maybe perhaps we'll talk a little bit about, our favorite saint, who kind of do we look up to as far as a person of sanctity.
Yeah, good idea. You may be a late bloomer and a Zoomer, but I'm a baby boomer. I was born just after the war. What are you, Generation X or Z? What are you? I'm not too sure. X, you're Generation X. Well, speaking of saints, my father instilled in all of us a beautiful devotion to St. Joseph. I love St. Joseph since I was a tiny child, and our family is kind of dedicated to St. Joseph. Many times over the years, as I built churches, many churches over the years, I always put a stained glass window in honor of my father, but to St. Joseph. But my mother taught us also the love of the saints, and particularly quite curiously, because we never had any idea that I'd end up in Peru, she had this wonderful devotion of Saint Mark de Porres, who was certainly one of my all-time favorite saints. That he's the patron of social justice and the patron of the poor. He's a great friend in Peru of all Peruvians and all of us who have lived there. So there would definitely be my favorite saints, Joseph, Martin, and so many others, Rosa of Lima, of course. Anyway, so it's really nice to have friends among the saints because they do help us and they do accompany us on our journey. How about you, Juan?
Firstly, the Saint Peter, which is my baptism name. So I could go by Peter with too many Peters around me. So I go by my Korean name. Actually, my Korean name is quite common in Korea. Anyway, so I like Peter because he followed Jesus Christ with like everything. He followed him with his strength, but also like courage and etc. And so also like with his weakness, like doubts, afraid, the kind of thing. So I like him, and also I had kind of devotion. Actually, I had 3 saints and 2 blessed in my mother's side family. Sometimes I ask their petition, their prayer. So when I pray, so we are family. So
You mean the Korean martyrs
Yeah,
are part of
Korean
your
martyrs.
family? They're part
Yes.
of your ancestors.
So,
Wow,
yeah,
that's
we are-
interesting.
we are
Beautiful
family.
heritage.
So can you pray for me? So the kind of thing, yeah. Since I was young, so when I visit their tomb, shrine in Korea, so this kind of like this kind of my habits. Ask them to pray for me. So what about you, Father?
I guess one of my go-to saints is Saint Augustine of Hippo. Maybe because he was a late bloomer too. Took him a while to figure out his that Jesus was calling him to a life of being a Christian and ultimately a priest and a bishop. But he has a beautiful conversion story, and he was so open and so transparent with his struggles and how the grace of God just penetrated his life. And he shared that in a very famous book called The Confessions. It was written, 1600 years ago, but it's as real and meaningful for us today as it was for him and his contemporaries in his day. And so it gives me hope, and I know that he's continuing to intercede for myself and everyone, and this is the beauty of having this cloud of witnesses that accompany us in our own Christian life. And so that's a little bit more about ourselves. I don't know, maybe is there any more that we want to share about ourselves? What we might have other favorites in life, whether it be our favorite drink or food or whatever it is.
My
I don't
favorite
know.
drink now. Well, just the other day was Juan's birthday, so on the 28th. So I would say that that day we lifted up a glass of dry wine in homage to him. So I'll do that to finish off. Blessings on you and on your new birthday. And may this year, please God, it be August, you may be ordained priest. And we'll raise another glass of wine to you and to all your colleagues and to your friends who will be ordained priest. What do you like to drink? Like, what's your favorite drink?
I like wine as well, sweet wine, dry wine, and I like Coke Zero.
Coke Zero.
And you, Father?
Me, I'm a very plain and simple guy. I like hot water with a slice of lemon in it. I'm always sipping hot water. It hydrates me, and I think it's healthy. So I just like hot water and lemon. Yeah.
So let's raise our wine, our Coke, and our tea.
Cheers.
Cheers to all of you. Blessings.
Cheers.
Cheers.
So, my dear friends, as we move forward, we're just going to be meeting every week like this. And again, more specifically, it's going to be around this topic of prayer, because prayer is the root. Prayer is the foundation of really building up this fundamental vocation that we all have to be the home church, the domestic church. And so please stay with us, accompany us as we explore these different forms of prayer, which is part of the tremendous richness and treasure of our Catholic Church. This is what we want to try to mine and pull out and offer to you to support you in your own journeys being the domestic church in your home. God bless.
God bless.